The first time the water hit the floorboard, Mason laughed. Not because it was funny, because it wasn't. Because laughing was easier than admitting that the East Fork River was already inside the Scout, and we were still pretending this was just a messy little adventure we'd brag about later. The old Volkswagen bus behind us coughed a cloud of exhaust like it was heckling our confidence. Up front, the Scout, an ancient International Harvester Scout of a truck with torn seats and a dashboard held together by hope and duct tape, lurched forward into the river like it had something to prove. And for a minute, it did. We'd met at the turnout just past the real stretch of civilization on Highway 39, the kind of place where the asphalt gives up and the mountains begin to decide whether they like you. There were 6 of us that day. Mason, who never said maybe when he could say, "Watch this." Tina, who brought a first aid kit like she'd learned something the rest of us hadn't. Gabe, who filmed everything on a battered camcorder like we were making a movie instead of making mistakes. Ray, who had the kind of calm that made you wonder what she had survived. Danny, who could fix anything if you handed her tools and didn't ask too many questions. And me, always along for the ride because, well, why not? I didn't have anything else going on that day. The vehicles looked like they'd been dragged out of different junkyards and made to swear an oath. The bus was painted in fading colors, sun-bleached murals, old stickers, a dented roof rack with a cooler strapped down like a hostage. You could smell its interior from 10 feet away. Old beer, wet towels, and that kind of smoke that clings to fabric like a grudge. The Scout, though, was the star. Lifted just enough to seem capable, tires bald enough to be questionable, and covered in mud like it wore last week's disaster as a badge. There was a chain in the back, a tow strap, a shovel, and a jack that looked older than everyone driving. Mason slapped the hood. "She's solid." Danny raised an eyebrow. "She's loud." "That's how you know she's alive," Mason said, grinning. We should have turned around then, not because we were scared, because we were excited, which is always more dangerous. Highway 39 doesn't just take you somewhere. It slowly convinces you that the rules you follow in town don't apply out there. The road narrows, the walls of rock close in, and the river appears beside you in flashes. White water and sun glare like a warning you can't translate yet. By the time we dropped down toward the East Fork San Gabriel riverbed, our voices were louder, our jokes meaner, our confidence fully inflated. That was the ritual. Pretend nothing bad ever happens. Like the mountains can't hear you. The East Fork riverbed is wide, bright, and deceptive. Gravel and boulders spread out like a playground for people who think gravity is negotiable. On a warm day, you'll find scattered groups, bonfires, coolers, folding chairs, laughter bouncing off the canyon walls. We parked the bus on higher ground, the engine ticking as it cooled. Someone popped a back hatch and out came party favors of the smoking kind. Snacks and beers, a blanket, and music that sounded tinny and far too cheerful for a place that could swallow you whole if you stepped wrong. For an hour, it was perfect. Gabe filmed Mason flexing for the camera on a boulder. Ray sat with her shoes off, toes in the cold water, staring upstream like she was listening to something we couldn't hear. Tina handed out sandwiches like a camp counselor. Then Mason pointed. "Look at that crossing," he said. The river wasn't huge, but it moved fast. Bright, loud water sliding around rocks and cutting channels through the gravel. There were tire tracks leading into it, proof that other people had done it. Proof that nothing was wrong with trying. "People drive it all the time," Mason added, as if the river had been interviewed. Danny squinted. "That's deeper than it looks." "It's fine," Mason said. "We'll just do a quick run across and back. Like a victory lap." Gabe perked up. "Do it slow. I want to catch it." That's another ritual. The camera comes out, and suddenly you can't back down without feeling embarrassed. Tina stepped closer to the edge, watching the current tug at a branch like it wanted to rip it to pieces. If it stalls, you're in trouble. Mason gave her a grin that was too bright. It's not going to stall. Ray didn't look at him. She looked at the river. That's what everyone says before it stalls. No one laughed, and that should have been the final sign. Instead, Mason climbed into the Scout. Danny climbed in too, driver's side, hands on the wheel like she didn't trust him with the ending. I'm driving, she said. Mason made an offended sound. Fine, but I'm narrating. Gabe started filming. The rest of us walked along the gravel bank following them, adrenaline rising. The Scout rolled forward, tires crunching over stones, and then it entered the water. At first it looked controlled. The water splashed up in curtains, the engine growled, and the Scout pushed through like an animal lowering its head. We cheered. We really did. It's embarrassing now thinking about how quickly we celebrated. Then the current caught the front end. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a subtle sideways slide, like the river was adjusting the Scout's angle the way you might adjust a picture frame. Danny corrected. The tires spun. The water sprayed higher. Mason laughed, shouting something we couldn't hear over the engine. And then the Scout dropped. Not off a cliff, off a hidden shelf. The front end dipped into a deeper channel we didn't see from the bank. The water surged up, slapped the hood, and threw a wave against the windshield so hard it looked like the river punched it. Ray's posture changed instantly. She stood up straighter, all calm gone. Tina said very quietly, "Oh no." The Scout's engine revved, then stumbled, like it swallowed water and didn't like the taste. Danny kept it moving, but now the truck was angled wrong, drifting sideways, the current pressing against the doors. Our laughter died. Gabe's camera stayed steady, but his voice shook. Danny? You good?" Danny's face was set, focused, tight. She was working the wheel, feathering the gas, trying to find traction where the riverbed shifted under the tires like marbles. The water climbed. It reached the bottom of the doors. Then it touched the seams. Then it began to leak inside. At first it was just a thin ribbon on the floorboard. Then it became a creeping sheet, cold and fast, like the river was claiming territory. And then, with a sound that made my stomach drop, the engine died. Everything stopped except the water. The Scout went silent in the middle of a loud river, like a person holding their breath underwater. Mason's head snapped toward the bank, and even from there I could see the change. His grin vanished. Danny turned the key again. The starter clicked. Nothing. She tried again. Click, click. The Scout rocked slightly as the current pushed it. Not much, just enough. Like the river was testing what it could take. "Get out!" Tina shouted. "No!" Danny yelled back, voice sharp. She pointed to the bank. "Tow strap! Now!" Ray and Gabe tore back toward the bus. Tina was already at the back hatch, yanking it open and digging through coolers and tangled gear like she was searching for a life raft. They came running again, the tow strap snaking behind them, soaked end slapping against stones. "Where do we attach it?" Gabe yelled. Danny's eyes flashed to the front of the Scout, half submerged, water punching the grill. "Front tow point," she shouted. "Passenger side." Mason climbed out of the window again, bracing his elbows on the frame. He reached down into the torrent, fingers searching along the bumper. The current shoved his arm sideways like it wanted to peel him off the truck. "I can't," he grunted. "I can't feel it." "It's there," Danny snapped. "Lower! Lower!" Ray shoved the strap toward him, and Mason finally caught the metal hook. He clicked it onto the tow eye with a sound so small I almost didn't hear it over the roar of the river. Then the strap went tight, too tight, jerking hard enough that the front of the Scout shuddered and the hook squealed against the metal. "If that rips off," Tina started. Nobody finished the sentence. We all grabbed the strap on the bank and leaned back together, heels digging into gravel, arms shaking, teeth clenched, holding the Scout in place while the river tested every weak piece of it. For a second, nothing happened. Then the strap snapped taut with a sickening twang that vibrated through my bones. It stopped shifting. Not because we pulled it out, because we halted it from sliding deeper, like we'd caught a falling bridge with a rope. Danny yelled, "Okay, good, keep tension." Mason shouted something I couldn't hear. His face was pale. The river kept battering the Scout, water pouring into the open door, swirling around their legs. The cab filled inch by inch. Tina's voice cracked. "You have to get out! Now!" Danny looked toward the bank, calculating. If they stepped out into the current, they could be knocked down, pulled under the truck, and pinned. If they stayed inside, the water would rise and the truck could shift again. It was the kind of choice that doesn't feel like a choice. Danny said, "Mason first." Mason nodded fast, swallowing hard. He climbed out of the passenger side window, not door, because the door was fighting the river. He dropped into the water with a splash that made my stomach turn. The current grabbed him instantly. He lurched, arms windmilling, and then Ray, still in the river near the boulder, yanked the strap like a guideline, and Mason caught it, wrapping both hands around it like it was the only real thing in the world. "Move slow," Ray shouted. "Don't fight it. Step with it." Mason did, inching toward the bank, shivering, eyes locked on us like we were the only safe place. He made it to the shallows and Tina grabbed him by the jacket and hauled him out, both of them slipping on rocks but staying upright. One down, Danny stayed. She leaned back in the driver's seat, water up to her waist now, and turned the key again, as if stubbornness could restart an engine drowned in river water. Click. Nothing. Danny's jaw tightened. She looked out at us, and I saw it clearly then. She already knew. She was deciding what to abandon. "Danny!" Gabe yelled. "Come on!" Danny took a breath, one controlled inhale like she was bracing against a wave, and climbed out the driver's window. The moment she dropped into the water, the river tried to take her. Her foot slid, her knee buckled, and for one sharp, terrifying second, she was down. The current pushed her sideways, her shoulder dipping, water rushing toward her face. My body moved before my brain did. I lunged forward, grabbing the strap with both hands and leaning back with my weight like an anchor. Ray hauled from the riverside. Gabe grabbed Danny's arm. And Danny rose again, coughing, eyes wild, and then she was upright, gripping the strap, moving forward step by step toward the bank. When she reached the shallows, Tina and I grabbed her and pulled her out like we were hauling a fish from a net. Danny collapsed onto the gravel, soaked and shaking. Everyone stared at the Scout. It sat there in the middle of the river, engine dead, door still half open, water pouring in, held in place by the strap around the boulder like a prisoner on a leash. The bus idled on the bank, its engine suddenly sounding too small. Gabe picked up his camcorder from Tina's hands and looked at it, then, without saying a word, turned it off. We stood there catching our breath, wet and shaking, trying to convince ourselves the worst was over. That's when Ray pointed. "Look, the tow strap, tight as a wire, rubbed against the edge of the boulder with every pulse of water, every tug of current. It wasn't cutting through instantly, but it was wearing. Tiny fibers began to fuzz, then peel. A soft fraying, almost delicate, like the river had moved from trying to take the truck to patiently sawing through our only control. Danny pushed herself up, swearing under her breath. "We can't pull it out, not like this." Mason, shivering, managed, "We've got the bus, we can tow it." Danny looked at the bus, then the river, then the Scout. "The bus will get stuck if it comes down here. Then we'll have 2 vehicles in the riverbed." Tina swallowed. "So what do we do?" No one answered right away because the answer felt like losing. Ray said it quietly. We leave it. Mason's face tightened. We can't just leave it. We can, Ray said. Because we're leaving alive. That's the only thing we don't negotiate. And that's when I realized the biggest twist wasn't the river or the engine or the strap. It was the fact that Ray, who had been calm all day, was scared enough to say it out loud. Danny crawled up onto the gravel and dug a marker out of the bus, one of those neon surveyor ribbons we used for camping. She tied it to a low branch near the bank, then wrapped another around a rock higher up, like we were leaving breadcrumbs for our future selves. Mason stood there dripping, watching the scout like it was a dog we had accidentally left in traffic. Take a picture, Ray said, practical. Landmarks, angle, everything. Gabe raised the camcorder instinctively, then paused, like the lens suddenly felt wrong. He used it anyway, quietly, filming the boulder, the ribbon, the bend in the river, the exact way the current hit the truck. Not for bragging, for proof, for memory, for a map back to our mistake. We didn't just leave the scout. We backed away from it, keeping eyes on the strap like it might snap the moment we turned our heads. We tightened the loop around the boulder, added a second line as a backup, and wedged rocks near the tires to keep it from shifting. None of it felt strong enough. Everything felt temporary. We loaded into the bus, wet clothes, shaking hands, the smell of river water replacing the smell of smoke and old fabric. The engine startled with a reluctant rattle, and the bus rolled away like it was annoyed to be responsible. The road out was quieter. No music, no jokes. Even Mason, usually a running commentary track, stared out the window like he was watching the river follow us. At one point, Gabe said we should have checked the depth. Danny didn't look at him. We did, from the bank. Yeah, Gabe said. That's not checking. Nobody argued. It wasn't a blame kind of silence. It was a we all know kind. When we finally hit pavement again, my hands started shaking harder, not from cold, but from the delayed realization of what could have happened. The canyon didn't care about us. It would have kept moving whether we lived or disappeared, and we had been one slip away. We came back early because nobody slept much. Daylight makes you think you're safer, but it also makes it easier to see what you ignored. The river looked lower in places and stronger in others, as if it had reorganized itself overnight just to confuse us. We brought help, another friend with a sturdier truck, more straps, a winch, tools, and enough caution to make Mason unusually quiet. When we reached the crossing, we stopped dead. The boulder was still there. The strap was still wrapped around it. But the scout had shifted. The tow strap was still there too, still looped around the boulder, but it didn't look the same. Daylight showed what the panic had hidden. The strap was frayed, roughened where it had rubbed the rock all night. Strands peeled like torn hair. And the scout's front tow eye, our lifeline, was slightly bent, like the river had been yanking on it for hours, trying to pop it loose. Tina touched the strap with 2 fingers, gentle as if it might bite. If we'd waited one more hour... Ray didn't let her finish. Don't. Danny nodded once, face tight. We're not doing yesterday again. It hadn't washed away. It hadn't disappeared. It had simply moved a few feet deeper, as if the river had dragged it during the night and then decided to stop, like a cat repositioning a toy. The water line sat higher on the doors. Inside, you could see debris, twigs, leaves, a soda can, floating where our feet had been. Danny stared at it a long time. We got lucky. Ray nodded. We used it all up. The recovery took hours. Winch line set, straps doubled, angles checked. People posted as spotters. No one acted cool. No one filmed. It was work now. Serious, careful, exhausting. When the Scout finally lurched free of the current and crawled onto the gravel, it looked like something pulled from a shipwreck. Water poured out of it in sheets. Mud dripped from the frame. The engine wouldn't turn over, not even close, but nobody cared. Mason touched the hood gently, like apologizing. "We're done." Danny looked at him. "Yeah, we're done." As we turned to leave, I looked back at the river. The East Fork kept rushing over rocks, sparkling in the sun, loud and bright and innocent looking again, like it hadn't tried to take our friends, like it hadn't taught us anything at all. But it had, because on that stretch of Highway 39, you can go up feeling invincible, and you can come back down understanding the difference between a story you tell for fun and a story you tell because you're grateful you get to tell it. Before we get out of here, if this story had your heart beating a little, do me a favor. Tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell. It helps this channel more than you'd think, and it tells YouTube you want more stories that build slow and then hit hard.